you're fully Dutch? Are you from the Netherlands originally?
Yeah, completely. Yeah. I'm born in Amsterdam, and I'm now living in Rotterdam already more than half of my life, which is of course very close to each other. So it's all Holland is anyway, or the Netherlands is compared to where you're from.
Mm-hmm.
Tiny. So the cities are so interconnected, so you can work in one place, live in the other, have dinner in another one. So that's a patchwork city, basically. Yeah.
And so I know you studied architecture at the Technical University of Delft, if that's pronounced correctly. Was architecture always clearly an interest for you from an early age?
Yeah, a bit, but not immediately. I actually started to study something else before I went to architecture, and that was chemistry. But that was in the 80s when there was this kind of no future crisis as well. So there was this issue of youth unemployment, and architecture was sort of a bad choice from that perspective. So I thought chemistry is really good, but it was really not my party, so to say. I really felt happy at the lab, and I thought I wanted to do something more creative, even though you can be creative in any profession, but I wanted to do design, and then I was actually, it was a kind of lottery system, and I was not in the lottery, so to say. I was not selected in the design school. It was not by portfolio, but it was just some kind of, at that moment, a lottery system, and the second choice was architecture. So for me, it was like a coincidence that I ended up in architecture. So but then after 3 months in the architecture school, it was clear that this was perfect for me, and I never missed that. I was actually quite happy that I was never selected for the industrial design school of the university there. Yeah.
Oh, industrial design was your first choice. It's funny, actually. Yeah. For myself, I had this fascination. I wanted to design toasters. I wanted to do industrial design, and I don't know why I wanted to design a toaster. I just did, and somehow toasters and cars,
flying toasters. I felt to go to the art school was one step too far, and I felt like I'm just not ready for that or so. And at the kind of university where you have technical plus a kind of more creative part, and that's an architecture and design basically at the university in Delft. That was actually a great match. So that was the reason why I went to study at the technical university, which is not really, it's a technical university. That says it a bit, but it's not really it has all this kind of stuff as well, some detailing and building physics and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Right. So perhaps not as theoretical as some schools tend to be.
Different. This is more academic, like you have in the UK, maybe in the States. So it's a bit more down to earth. But of course, the school is quite large, and there were all kind of interesting people that were there. So that made it a really good moment to study together. Yeah.
So you get there and you realize pretty quickly that architecture is going to be a passion of yours, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yeah. No, there was nothing else left. I was also really into music, instruments. There was just no time to do that at all. So I just dropped that, and I really went full on to architecture. And that it was clear that if I wouldn't do it completely, head over heels, completely into it, it would not be good or successful or something like this. It was all or nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. But it seems like it worked out.
I think that's an understatement. Yeah, it worked out for you. Not bad being a founder of one of the top firms. Yeah, sure. You said you had an interest in music, in performance?
Well, this was basically during my high school years that I was into played saxophone. Which was nice, and also pretty. It took a lot of time and hours, so to say. But it was clear that starting in architecture school, it was just. It would bite each other in a way that the time I would spend on it would mean that my project would be less good or so. So it was only that. Otherwise, it would somehow be not as good as. So if you're working on a design, it's kind of all consuming, and then you cannot drop, you cannot stop. I was like this at university.
Yeah, I can understand that.
No fanatic.
Yeah, nothing else. No social life, no eating, no sleeping.
Sure, there's a social life, but there was a sort of a nice competitiveness among the group that you really want to go for it. And that's strange that even before that whole competition circus where you have to do the deadline thing in offices. That was already present in school. It's quite intriguing that it's all over the globe, that architecture is this time-consuming hobby. Yeah.
I am wondering, what kind of music did you play in high school with the saxophone?
Well, I was starting off classic music with clarinet, and so I was really from the classical side, also in the classical saxophone. So that's like I had a teacher that was into modern classical music, written for saxophone. And later on, I started to go a bit more into the improvisational side, but it was not that I went into jazz or something from the start. It was actually modern classical music. Yeah.
Interesting. I ask because actually in high school, I played the trumpet and mostly arranged my classical, different ensembles and a little bit of jazz. Yeah. And it was a similar thing. You get to college, and I actually played trumpet throughout college, but at some point I realized I'm living this dual life because, as you said, architecture, it does take all your time. And
I think they're not. I think you have architecture musicians that basically are dropouts from architecture school, and then that turned into music. Whereas you have, I know that, for instance, I think the Pet Shop Boys, one of these guys was into architecture. Whatever.
Really?
It would be an interesting article about which musicians used to study architecture. Yeah, well.
Yeah, for sure.
Whatever.
and who's the happier person?
Maybe.
That's a tough profession. So, how many years was the program? 4 year, 5?
Well, officially, I think at that moment it was 5 years. It was still before the master bachelor system. It was a different situation at that moment. You had to do 1 year. That's like the pre-year, and then there were 4 years altogether. I studied almost 6 years.
Okay. Yeah. So 6 years, and when was this time frame? Because I know MVRDV was founded in
early 90s.
We started officially in 1993, but actually we did our first collaboration in 1991.
Okay.
And that was right after, basically a couple of maybe 1.5 years after finishing.
Wow.
Yeah, I finished in 1990. Yeah, and I also already met Winy and Natalie before that. So during the studies, we knew each other already, and we had different connections, so to say. Yeah.
I see. But so you weren't all at the same school.
We were in the same year. Natalie and me were in the same year, and we were also a couple, and we still are. And Winy kind of entered the school at a later stage because he did a landscape design course before, so he came in at a higher year, so to say, and he studied urbanism, and later went into architecture. So. Let's say one of the 2 last years, Winy sort of appeared in the scene, in the school, for me at least. It was a workshop, and we were starting to work together on some side projects in the higher years. Yeah.
Interesting. For one, I had no idea that you and Natalie were a couple. I mean, I don't know why I would know that, but
yeah, some people know. Yeah, that's really funny. Some that were like when we worked on our early work, and there were all kind of people that we really closely worked with, advisors and everything, and they also would not know that. Interesting. And they were completely shocked that I was then Natalie's partner. Yeah, never mind. But that's still, we're still, we were together before we started. Yeah.
So the kind of collaboration started pretty early on. I mean, even like when you guys were in school, it might have seemed like, and then right afterwards, maybe the first sort of official project you did, the 3 together, happened very shortly after. So there really wasn't a lot of time. It wasn't like you graduated and then you worked at another office for 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, no, we worked at another office. I think right after school, we were lucky that during the moment when we did our final design, the master diploma project, Rem Koolhaas was a guest professor in Delft.
Wow!
And then there would be a kind of thesis studio, and that actually Rem was then leading. It also was involved Ben van Berkel and some other people. And then I applied for that. Winy also applied for that, and some other people that later worked at OMA. So we had a really interesting group of people that we worked together with 2 years almost on this diploma project. And then right after, let's say 1 month, maybe even, less than a month, we got a call like, come to OMA and blah, blah, blah. They needed people and we were somehow wanted there. And we just didn't really have to apply. I just went to the office and got a job there because Rem was already knew who we were, basically.
Wow.
And Natalie worked at Meccano, Van Steenhoebe, at the same period. And then during our work there, we did this competition in the weekend, the evening. That was our first collaboration. Yeah.
Gosh.
Seemed hard, but at that moment, strangely enough, there was a bit of a dip, in the work at OMA, and there were some issues also with the kind of financially, so to say. There was a bit of a difficult time for OMA, and we sort of benefited from that dip to start to do our own competition on the side.
Gotcha.
Yeah, which is normally not really working out.
Well, that's a lot of hours. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, we were in New York for a period of time and we had friends who worked at OMA, and it's a lot of hours there and doing competitions on top of that.
Yeah, for me it was, and I think for Winy as well, it was sort of a postgraduate experience. So we really learned a lot as well. And that's also, we credit that experience that you jump in the office, but you also get the opportunity to participate as a youngster, as an experienced architect, so to say. This teamwork and the collaboration with advisors, and it was really inspiring. Yeah,
that's fantastic. So the three of you were pretty tight, and you started an office was it 2 or 3 years after graduation ish, right?
Kind of, yeah. And then there was this grant system in the Netherlands, which is you could apply for kind of we call it START grant. So you could start your office or do a special project. And because we won this competition, we were able to say that we had potential, so to say, and we got this grant, and that gave us some financial space to start up and to quit our jobs. Yeah,
I see.
Wow,
that's great.
Yeah.
We should. Yeah, I don't know if there's grants.
It's a good system. It's not so generous anymore, but it was basically if you could be for painting, or you would be a filmmaker or a performance artist, you could apply for a sort of artistic grant. So, and there was nobody who would say like, we're going to check what you're going to do. So it was basically money you could spend. You could even buy a car from it, basically. It doesn't matter. But of course, we didn't buy a car. we actually made models from it. So we went to a model maker, and we had the project we did. We made a nice model of that project, which is actually still existing in the collection of the Architecture Museum in the Netherlands. So it was well spent. And that model was on exhibition about all these grants, all the people who got these grants. And that was, led to a first commission. So it was all sort of one, if you listen to that story, it's like, as if it was planned like that. But one thing led to another. And this model was at a great position in that exhibition next to photographers. And it was a really nice collective of artworks and different people together from a certain generation. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. So you guys start the office, and even with the grant, though, starting an office, at that time, you're relatively young, right? Is not an easy thing to do. I'm wondering because office has been around for like almost nearly 30 years,
True.
But the first 0 to 5 years, were there challenges, or were you guys able to get work pretty consistently?
Yeah, I think we had the luck that we had our first commission that was actually from a TV company. We have this network, just like, it's not like the BBC, but we have like many BBCs in the Netherlands. So there are different companies that are state funded. They have a certain background, and they broadcast on the national network. One of the most experimental, let's say, interesting ones wanted to have a new headquarters, and they were looking for an architect without experience, and we were there without experience, and on that exhibition, and they gave us the opportunity to see if it could work out in terms of design and collect personal connection, and that was the case. So we got our first commission, which was already a serious office building, which we couldn't handle ourselves at all. We had to needed help from others. But it was also an enormous kickstart, and everybody knew that company. So we were saying, okay, we're doing the headquarters of this company, PPRO is the name, and that was already gave other potential clients a sign like, okay, these guys they're interesting, let's check them out. So and that was at the time when the experience didn't really count. So it was more about the attitude. We got commission from a housing corporation. Right now, it would be much more tough for a young office to get these type of projects. Mm-hmm. But somehow at that moment, early 90s, it was a very positive time in the Netherlands. About after this more depressing 80s, the 90s were quite jubilous, so to say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was there ever a time when you thought that maybe you would leave the Netherlands and work somewhere else, or you guys would move the office?
Yeah,
or anything like that?
Yeah, somehow. But I during my studies, Natalie and me, we went to Barcelona. We worked at Elias Torres and José Antonio La Peña and Torres Architects, and that was a really interesting time just before the Olympics, so to say. It came in '92, so there was a lot of things happening end of the '80s in Barcelona. So that somehow we thought, okay, once we are finished, we go to Spain and we continue look for a job there. But then this whole competition thing, things were different. It was the studio, the diploma studio was RAM, and everything went like in a slightly different direction. But it was also quite exciting. So Spain was out of the picture, so to say. Yeah.
And so from that time, it started off with roughly 3 people. And now you're like 3.
So now it's almost 300. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's an insane journey, and it was not a gradual, but it was also not a very bumpy ride. But in the last 5 years, we expanded a lot, and there was also a time where we were pretty stable, and it was a bit. But of course, in the beginning, you don't know anything about leading an office or organizing a company, getting things organized, like having staff, all this kind of stuff. So you learn by doing it, and it was fun. It was good. Yeah.
You guys do a lot of work internationally. Have you ever considered opening offices in different countries while keeping the
we started of course after the Expo Pavilion in Hanover. That was in 2000. We had publications for El Crocus magazine, the Spanish magazine. That gave us more international appearance, and then we got also work abroad. But currently we have, we have 3 offices, and one in Paris, and one in Berlin, and one in Shanghai at the moment. Wow. So we have, and that is now quite useful because of the whole pandemic. Traveling, especially to Asia, is very difficult. But even until recently to Spain, to serve to Paris was complicated.
Yeah.
So we have a team. They were these offices. The satellites, as we call them, became more important. And for them it was also very good, so to say, that they were not so. They became a little bit more independent. Even though all the design work is still, the core of the design is still being done in Rotterdam. So they're not. So they mostly, they have a local presence, and they don't do the beginning of the design.
I see.
Oh, okay,
right. Okay.
It.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. So the 3 partners, I mean, you guys are local.
Yeah, we don't have local partners in the satellites. All the partners, basically, like official partners, are in Rotterdam.
Right.
But
gotcha.
it could change. It could change that one of them will go abroad, or we actually one of these satellite offices develops in a certain way that one of them becomes a partner. But currently, all our partners are based in the Netherlands. Yeah.
I was wondering.
They're not all Dutch, but we are. Yeah.
I was wondering, between the 3 of you, is there a clear sense of who has responsibility over what? And sometimes when there's 3 partners in an office, like one person is the marketing guy, another person is the design person, and then et cetera, or is...
No, we didn't start like this. We started off like this. That we did a lot of things together, which was in a way, looking back, not the most efficient thing to do. But on the other hand, it was good for the I would say, for the dynamics of the project and the end result of the design. But after you become a bit larger and there's more and more stuff happening, this becomes a model that's not sustainable. You cannot do all the pencil together about everything. So that means, and in certain projects, after a collective start, one of us would then continue with it in more detail, and the others would so to say look over the shoulder. That was the sort of in-between stage, and now it's a bit more. It's not really separated, but we, basically one of us is always involved in any of the projects, and then of course you do much more projects, so you have a different position in the whole design team as before. But it's still possible to sort of control the design work. But we have this kind of collective sessions with like more people than the three of us, where we speak about the direction and some of the specific projects and whatever. Yeah, of course. Yeah, and this is of course a very important issue: how to keep that spirit, which is sort of specific for us, and that makes a certain design or certain building an MVRDV project, so that it doesn't kind of disperse. We have actually we don't have a fixed style, or we don't have this sort of super clear handwriting that other offices might have. So we have a bit more colonialist. We don't want. We have a very diverse portfolio, I would say.
Yeah.
Which I think it's nice. Yeah.
That's an interesting question though, because scaling from 3 to 300-ish, it's nice. So you guys are managed to have time still to actually do design, be involved with design, and you're not just managing business and office related.
Yeah, there was a moment where actually it was like busy and tense, and then somebody actually from our not from within the office but from outside said, maybe you should talk to some kind of business advisor, I think like this, and maybe we were never really interested in this, but actually it turned out that this was very good advice, and that person said, well, you should reorganize this. You don't have to decide everything together. You could, in certain specific sections of the work, one of you could take the responsibility, and then later on that led to that because of the expansion we could actually hire people that would be doing this kind of thing. So that freed up all our time, on, not all, but a lot of time on the design work. And so now we have a whole managing director. And before, this thing, one of us was the managing director, and now there's somebody else who's doing that and really likes to do that.
Right.
That gives a totally different atmosphere. And well, the work of that person is doing is, for me, I did it for a while, and I was like, okay, I should have to do this. How am I getting it all together? And when we said, okay, maybe it's better that somebody else is doing that it's not one of the partners that founded the company. Big relief. Yeah.
That's
should
great.
Have done it earlier.
I mean, why not? I mean, you started the thing. You should do what you want to do if you don't want to be dealing with, office management.
No, but of course you have to be able to do that, because when the company is a bit smaller, you cannot afford somebody who's only doing that. Or we have even before that there was not. You didn't even have somebody who was doing the finances. That was the very early stage. And right now we have somebody who's doing contracts and these kind of things. So that's somebody who's only doing the contracts, which was just for years the pain in the ass, so to say, for many of us, to check the contracts and to negotiate that part. Yeah, it was part of the job, obviously, and we all did it. So, but we're all pretty happy that now there's somebody who really likes to dive into that side of the work, or has a bit of a juridical background, and checks it, and then we say, well, I mean, of course we have a look at it, but in a different way.
Yeah, that stuff takes so much time. It's always written in very confusing language, So, but back to the question sort of, I guess, how do you almost, because you were saying, when you have an office of that of your size, like one of the tricky things is making sure that the design, the quality of the final products, and also the design interests and the maybe even the way of working stays consistent. It's like it doesn't get watered down. How did you guys manage that? Was that difficult to do?
Yeah, well, yes and no. I think on one hand we try now, and when somebody comes to working for us, we give them a sort of crash course in MVRDV, and we also try to set up company standards in a way, and how we approach a project. And there's of course quite a lot of people that work for quite a long time with us, so that's there's quite a large core, so to say, of people that are more than 10 years at the company. And that helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So they know how we operate, what things to do and not to do, so to say, but also, part of the company strategy is that we also have somehow an aspect of surprise, and so we also want to develop, of course. We don't want to kind of get stuck in a kind of typical story, but we still do follow the principles of our early work, where we say, well, the typical aspect like optimal use of space and the kind of density versus non-density, contrast between atmospheres, collection of different, let's say, diversities. Mm. So all these kind of elements that were there in the early days are still there in the current, let's say, state of mind. And so that takes more effort when you have a big team and you have more people that are coming in the studio. But we organize all kind of things to keep that spirit there. We have all of these sessions, so to say, that we also do collective presentations in the office. And I think that helps. I think somehow that we indicate what the values of the company are, not that you sort of enter when you work for us, that you enter somehow a certain world, not just the physical world, but also in terms of architecture.
Right. So it seems to me it's almost as much about, you use the word spirit, almost office culture or this other dimension to it that's not. It's not that is equally as important, and it's not just like here's a list of steps you do to do one of our projects. Mm-hmm. There's some other dimension there that's part of the atmosphere.
True, indeed, and it's literally also a part of, let's say, company culture, where we actually, when we started, we had to look for a different office because the space was not big enough anymore. So that was a bit of a big search. And then ultimately we found a very nice place, and we decided to design it ourselves in a way, also to not completely, but in terms of interior design. And then basically our office was our client. So that was a very interesting situation. A very difficult client, you could say. That was also a very critical client. But that worked out really well, and also how you basically, of course, it's a topic that's very hot as well, with the whole pandemic issue and how you work at home and what would that mean for the office. I think we were pretty well prepared there, so to say. So we have a really nice office with lots of different atmospheres and different spaces. We have super nice tables. We have a nice living room, so to say. So we design it almost like, we call it a house, the MVRDV house, like it is almost a domestic atmosphere. Yeah,
that sounds lovely. When was this done?
That was about 5 years ago. I think.
Oh, recently.
5-6 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So quickly then, I was just wondering, during the pandemic, are you guys still remote at this point, or how is that working?
We're it's a bit of a mix. We have this. I think it's about 1/3 that's now in the office. But of course, there are not many people that are there 5 days a week. So you could say that maybe 2/3 of the people is there every week, at least 2 days, 2-3 days. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And for many people, it's quite a pleasant combination, that you can say, I work 2 days at home and I will be 3 days in the office. That is probably what's going to be a new normal. And some people, we have some people that work a little bit further away. But on the other hand, we say, okay, we also have to come. So so we don't want to prove, we don't want the people actually stuck at home or only working at home and not coming to the office. So but right now there's no force being used to say you have to come, but it's going in a quite natural way. Some people are there 5 days a week, others are there 1 day a week. But we keep a bit of a track how many people can be there at the same time.
Yeah.
So you have to tell the office when you want to come. That's done in a team. So we have different studios. That may be nice to mention. We have about 8 studios in the office in Rotterdam. Each studio is about 25 people, average. Some bigger, some a bit smaller, and they are more or less functioning as a group, as a sort of office in the office, doing specific group of projects that can be in a certain country or have a certain typology. We have an urban studio, we have a French studio, we have a German studio. We have a studio it's quite large now in Asia, the Asian studio, etc. So these groups you can transfer from studio to studio, but they organize themselves. So it's like a cell structure, you could say.
Right.
Interesting.
That's interesting that you have groups, but also that you're not trying really hard to super define the way the groups happen. Like in some offices, they're very, very structured in that we have 3 departments. Again, it tends to be one's technical, one's design, one's management, you know.
No. Yeah, no. So it's not based on the stage of the designs. Of course, there are also support teams, and they have the studio and the support teams. That can be the visualization team, but also. So we try to set up some kind of matrix structure where you have specialisms and project teams, and ultimately in each project team, certain specialists should be there. And this is a process that we are now in, and it's becoming quite useful. So you have maybe some people that are really into scripting, and we have to make sure that in each studio there is one of these people, one of these persons, and they all together meet and develop these specialisms again. That can be done with sustainability or technical detailing or materials, etc. Yeah.
You were saying that after the pandemic ends, fingers crossed, that for a lot of offices, or a lot of businesses rather, the new standard is going to be a part, being in the office 3 days a week and at home 2 days a week. Is that going to be the case for MVRDV though? Because it feels like architecture, I've just been assuming this entire time that all architecture offices would require everyone to come back, full time, 5 days a week, no question.
No, I don't think so. No. I think it will be it will be an interesting. This definitely is a learning curve for many. I think not only in architecture, that you can work in groups remote, and you see that in teaching and also at the university. How this whole everybody's using the same software, of course, in the whole Miro and that kind of stuff. That makes collaboration much more interesting. And of course, we also know you have to come together and maybe stand around a table or look at a model. That's also part of that. And I think it can be a hybrid between these collaborations, physically or more remote. So that could be an interesting balance. But speaking about intense and long hours, another part that we started also because we became bigger, and then we have this in the Netherlands. There's this regulation where you have to have a works council and okay, let's do this. And out of this system, we said one of the main, let's say, nuisances or issues for the staff is over hours. And I think, okay, how can we tackle over hours? And then in the beginning, it's part of the job. That you have to do it. It's just everybody's doing it. But now we are much better at organizing it. Of course, it's part of the job, but we should also like immediately compensate it and so we become much more not really focused on that, but somehow we realize that when we do this well, it's the ultimate thing. It will be beneficial. So when you need to work extra, then it's no big deal. Everybody understands. But it shouldn't be a problem as well to say, hey, I just spent so much time on this. I'm reorganizing my hours a bit, and I will be leaving at 4 o'clock every day, or I will be two days off, or even 1 week off. So that takes time to, that's in the system of the office, and I'm quite happy that we managed to have it, to make it a bit more relaxed. Of course, people might listen to it and say, haha, but easy to say, but now we do listen to this, and we try to make it not so crazy. And of course, we have been all experiencing what it's like to have this all-nighters all the time. After a while, you get completely fed up with it. So we'd like to there's a lot to say for when people stick to the office for a longer period, and that you can work together in a more sustainable way.
Yeah, that's great. It's interesting because that particular issue, I think, has become more of a front topic in the last, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 years, at least from my experience in the United States. And I've always sort of wondered, how much of an awareness for this issue is abroad as well, because it's tied to obviously people being underpaid, burnout, and even toxic work environments, which is sort of a different thing even. So these issues also kind of come up elsewhere.
Absolutely. No, I think it's the architecture as a profession. We should do something or at least be aware of that. How we can improve that. In a way, it's if you explain this to other professionals or from other corners, so to say, they don't understand. They think, how and why. Yeah. Of course, it's okay to be dedicated, but there should be certain limits, of course.
Yeah. A question about design process, because there is a consistency throughout the work, I think. And I know we touched on it a little bit, but is there a discernible, like relatively consistent design process that leads to buildings and projects that have this consistent quality to them? Or how does that work?
Yeah, this question has been asked to me before, but I find it very hard to answer. That there is that kind of a recipe, and of course, and every project in a way has its own dynamics. And sometimes you immediately it's completely clear that this is the best solution, and sometimes it's a real struggle. But I think what we try to say that we try to have some kind of consistent logic in a project, but also have a certain attitude when it comes to kind of urban issues or typological solutions. I think it's hard to describe it in words, but I think there is a conceptual approach, I would say, in our work that should be there. And of course, you have to make it beautiful details, great materials, but that can all be done. And sometimes there's money for that, and sometimes there's less money for that. But ultimately, it should be interesting. Also, we're not interested in boringness, so to say. To do another project because you have to do it for the sake of the turnover. So it's just ultimately we'd like to avoid that. So and of course you have discussions about we need so much new work. But if you have the right projects that share that same spirit, then you don't have to worry about it anymore. And this is more or less what we hope to achieve, that we get enough interesting clients and nice projects to make the stuff that everybody is excited about. And not only me, but also our staff,
right?
And the people that kind of benefit or live or use our buildings.
Right. It sounds like maybe the things that are consistent is more of a set of interest and, as you said, an attitude toward things, and maybe a rigor in the logic, and maybe that's it. Yeah. That's all you need to kind of make sure things are of the right
and sometimes
standard.
that's extremely clear and in a project, and sometimes it's there but it's a bit more hidden. And maybe we also think that you have sort of design evolutions between projects. So one thing is leading to the next, or there's an idea that is sort of comes back in a slightly different form, and so that there is this sort of sequence of designs that can go back to, let's say, even decades now, where it's still part of the same root.
Talking about attitude, I feel like a lot of MVRDV's building have this kind of like humor and playfulness to them, like they don't take themselves too seriously. Is that something that is like very important for you guys, and when did that become clear?
Yeah, I think that's a nice way of saying it, that we don't take ourselves so serious, or that we can make a project that takes itself not so serious. That's maybe you don't think about it, of course, all the time. Let's be funny or so. And not every project it can be really annoying at the same time. But it's a sort of looseness and sort of open-mindedness, or say, okay, why not like this, and just having a fresh look at things, and that people call it humor. Humor and architecture is a very, I would say, tricky combination, but it's maybe a sort of a relaxed attitude to certain things. And indeed, some architects can take themselves extremely serious, and maybe we have experienced this one, and of course maybe in the time that we were in school, or I don't mention any names or so, but it was at this time when everybody was reading French philosophers, so to say, and of course we read them too, but we were like, okay, okay, what's the real point about this? Other issues are more important. So I think we try to combine different observations, regulations, or requests, and invent this solution where you think, okay, really, this is perfect, or this is really, I never thought about that, but now that I see it, that's what I want. That's the ultimate goal, I think. That is sort of, that is sort of desire and that people get in the, well, this is the solution and this is the idea I want to push forward. And it's not just comes from us, but it comes from the people that either you do it for your client or the city or whatever is involved. Yeah.
I wonder if all that, in particular, the kind of relaxedness about architecture, which is not to say you're not serious about your work, of course, but that kind of mentality, a little bit of it also keeps things fresh. Because I do think some architects try really hard to find like the perfect logic for the way to do things every single time. And then they become frozen sort of because they've rationalized it, and then they're done and they can't get out of it. They're stuck.
Now, of course, in the game of architecture, it's kind of always this kind of force field of aspects. So you have to operate in, it can be also a minefield as well, to say, well, how to make sure the solution that you like to achieve is really being achieved in the end. And in many cases, it has to do with financial issues, but it also has to do with kind of how to explain people that your idea is actually really good, and doesn't look strange, and will not be hated by, or people say, well, you cannot do this here, or so this is all part of the role of the architect as well. So how to make sure that you explain your project and that people understand the intentions you have, that they get along and they buy it, so to say, and in the end they get really excited about it. And that I never realized it when I was in school, that this part of the job is as important as the design itself. So if your design is not understood, then you basically failed. Even though the design is great, if nobody understands it, you have a problem.
Yeah. And that leads me to a question about the diagrams specifically.
I was just going to ask.
But just before I get to that, one of the things that's come up, I think, in the conversation is that there's a consistency in the interests that you guys have. And I was wondering if, and you listed some of them, I think, but I was wondering, at least at the building scale for architecture, as opposed to, let's say, master planning. For architecture, do you know roughly like what those interests are, consistency from project to project, even personally for yourself? Like, what are the things that fascinate you, or continual questions?
I think for every time there you have a different combination of aspects that come together in a project, and to have too many of them in one project, it's usually doesn't work out. But sometimes it can be a focus on certain tech solution with the material, but also it can be a fantastic combination of programs or silhouettes or typology. But ultimately, I think the spirit of the project is that should also be understood without knowing these kind of things, so that you can enjoy it without thinking too much. And then later on, maybe say, hey, that's what's actually this idea, and behind it is actually this, and now I realize it's that topic, and it can be a building that of course the market hall in Rotterdam is a nice example where this symbolic arch made out of the houses is created in this urban living room, so to say, where the market is. You don't have to understand, let's say, the complete logic behind it to enjoy that space, and later on maybe realize, but this is how it works. That's an interesting story. Whereas, sometimes it's much more clear from the beginning, what the intentions of a project are. Anyway, it's hard to explain in clear wording. But ideally, there's indeed a certain fun factor, and it can be in the design, or it can be in the use, or in the whole process of making it. That keeps us going, I think. And, if that fun, it sounds a bit light, but a certain excitement and joy, maybe that's maybe part of the work that we try to do.
I like that.
And sometimes that,
Yeah.
And it can be like if you have, for instance, we have the project where we have cantilevers, and we did quite a few of those. It's of course, it should have a reason why you do that, but it every time I see these projects again, I think, okay, and people experience the visits or the how they use these kind of buildings. Yeah, it's interesting to see. I really like to also to look back. Of course, as an architect, when you design a project, it's a very intense period, and also the construction, and you are really, really involved and into it. And after a while, then you give it sort of away, almost like your child is leaving the house. But you still want to keep an eye on it and check how things are rolling. And that's also nice. So you come back to the project, or you talk to people, or you see how things are actually working or not working. That's another aspect. I think it's part of having a collection of projects that are being built in the last, let's say, 25 years. It's interesting to see what happens with them. Yeah.
That's amazing. I've always wondered, like, because we're relatively young in a certain sense, like, what is it like to go through a city and see your projects and basically have a big impact on a place for this, especially with the projects that are the scale that you guys tend to do. That's pretty impressive. I really like the sentiment of, you don't have to, you don't have to like fully be aware of its concept and do all the reading behind and the rationale to understand and or rather to enjoy the thing. Like, it should bring joy to. And that's an important point, because as you said earlier, like, architecture is for, especially large architecture, is for the public. It's for everyone that's walking by.
Yeah. And of course, you can explain it in a way that's different, or depending on the audience that you're speaking to. And where we say, okay, we like to make, for instance, a three-dimensional city, and people say, okay, a three-dimensional city, what's that about? And then no, it's about pull up life from the horizontal into the vertical. That more things are happening on different heights, and then if you explain that, the people are still looking at you like, okay, what's he talking about? But then when they see an example where we have a park on the roof, and then they get it, like, oh yeah, and it's super nice. Yeah, that's really interesting to see. We have now this project in our hometown, the Depot building, the Arts Depot.
Oh yeah,
That's going to open in a couple of months, and. You notice that the people are looking forward to it. Of course, museums have been closed for a long time, so they're looking forward to anything cultural at the moment, but especially this building with a public roof deck, with an exposition space and a cafe and a little park and a great view. So I think that will be, that people will understand what the intentions were, and there was lots of debate about it when the building was announced, and people also complained, some people, but many were in favor. But that's part of this whole convincing topic, where you have to, people are sometimes hesitant and they're a bit afraid of something strange, but then ultimately they become extremely proud and happy with it. They turn completely. Yeah.
Picking up on that, I was wondering, you guys have done work in a lot of different countries and a lot in the Netherlands, right? Not a lot of work in the United States, from what I understand.
Well, it's coming.
It's coming. Okay. Well, we're waiting. We're waiting. We're ready. But I guess the larger question was, like, do you, from all the work you've done, can you see a difference between how open different places are, different cultures are to certain kinds of architecture? Are they more receptive to certain things?
Yeah, I think it needs quite. Yeah, every country has its own culture and modus operandi when it comes to architecture and design. Yeah, as an architect, you have to know a little bit how to behave. And I think we're relatively lucky that there's quite an open-minded attitude here towards the new design, and that we use that now to let's say to export that attitude to other places. And now I think in the States we are really we have a small studio in Rotterdam focusing on America as well, and Canada. And we have 2 projects under construction at the moment. And we're really thinking about, okay, how can we make a next step? So it could also be that we in a few years we might have an office in the US. So we're definitely looking at that. Yeah, but we don't overhurry, so to say. But we definitely like to. There's lots of interest and connections, and but of course we also have. It's not in the sense not around the corner. So it also in terms of that works, of course, both sides. So people that like to work with us, but we are not there, and how to and vice versa. And in some places that's less of a problem. Like in Asia, the distances are also very big. We don't need to speak the language, but that's there somehow it went faster. But I think the time is getting there. So to say that we and of course with these we have one project under construction in San Francisco and one in New York. And I think, that's already a first sign. We didn't have an office, of course. But the next step would be that we become more serious by being more present there. Yeah.
Which project in San Francisco?
It's a housing project, and it's part of the. It's a site near the Giants Stadium.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes.
And it's together with 4 architects. Jeannie Gang and Work AC and Henning Larsen and us. And the 4 of us, we have some kind of a block, like a neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And so it's still early stages of construction, so not much to see, but it's definitely happening. Yeah.
Cool. Because I've often looked at like your guys' work, and again, a lot of it's not in the States, and I've always wondered, like, why don't we get some of that stuff here? Like, it's so interesting and cool, and they're doing stuff like, why don't we have that here?
But I think, we have been teaching in the past, and there's lots of lectures and stuff, but I think there's a big gap between the academic scene of architecture and the practical scene, and then that's so. Yeah, that takes time, let's say, to have the concrete developer or client, or of course we have selections for museums and everything, but we did competitions. Maybe we were not always lucky, or we didn't hit the right note or whatever. We did definitely try, but now things seem to come together. I think in the next couple of years we'll be doing more work in the States for sure. Yeah.
I think the observation that there's a gap between what happens in school versus in the professional realm, or what, I guess in the professional setting, what the general public is open to seeing. Maybe I was wondering, maybe that gap is a little bit bigger in the United States, because the gap in the United States is huge.
Yeah. No, but I think it's very interesting to think, how can you bridge that gap then? Yeah. I think it's also, and the architects can play a role in that. I think by explaining their work or understanding what is maybe the need or the interest of the people or the neighborhood, so to say. I think there's definitely work to do, like you could say, and I think it's exciting to think about that. Yeah.
And on that note, that reminds me. No, sorry. Go ahead, please.
No. I think there's many. The topic of, let's say, transformations. Like, I think there's anyway something that will be on the agenda for the next decade. So sustainability is a topic, but the best using an existing building and turning it into something else, you will see more and more.
Right. Yeah. Wait, because why?
Because we built so much in the last decades, then it's like the aging of the population. You also have this aging of the building. So this kind of generation of buildings become either obsolete or need something else, or gets a new opportunity. Mm-hmm. And and we now doing actually projects in China where that were built 20 years ago, and we transform them into something else. And that's because they built them at the moment, and they were not really thinking for, let's say, if it was a good building, or I don't know. And instead of demolishing them, they first think, okay, maybe we should see if we can transform them,
right,
instead of demolishing them. And that's I think that will be the first thing. Of course, it's typical maybe that Lacaton Vassal is one of the critiker. They have that in their DNA, even much more than we. But that you have to see. Why am I demolishing? What can I keep? What can I use?
Right.
It's maybe the first step, and we've gone, of course, making an attractive urban environment in exciting neighborhoods. That's interesting stuff to do.
Yeah, right. I mean, certainly, if let's say across the board, all the architects practice or approach projects more in that perspective, the amount of resources that would be saved, not just physical, but financial and human, like all of it. I mean, it's massive. It's massive.
Totally. Yeah. No, the whole thing, of course, competitions are nice to do. You need them as well, but it's also very it can be relief to have direct commission and develop some things that will save a lot of time and energy as well. Yeah. So, whatever. Yeah.
On the topic of communicating ideas to clients and local community members on boards and whatever it might be, your guys' diagrams have always been super crystal clear and fun and concise and very good at communicating information. And I've always wondered, where do those diagrams get developed throughout the process? Because there's definitely, I mean, the design is not always linear, a step-by-step kind of thing, for sure not. But in some cases, there's a fair amount of post-rationalization of a project kind of after it's done. And I've always wondered, like, these things are so clear. I'm not saying that's a bad thing either. I mean, it happens for sure. But your diagrams are so clear. Like, are they typically, when do they happen in the design process?
Now, I think, of course, in the design concept, you can imagine the diagrams, and maybe they're not as clear yet as they are. And it's post-rationalization, I like that word. So in the concept and explanation of a project, the storyline is there. And then after, if you're not able to explain it yourself, the diagram should explain it for you. So that means that you might need to adjust the clarity or the sequence so that you can say is post-rationalization. But ultimately, it's not changing it. But yeah, it's basically editing the design process and showing the idea without words. And of course, you have the picture or the drawing. No architecture drawing can do that, but the diagram can do it in a much more straightforward and direct way.
Is that something that's powerful when you have like presentation with clients or things that are not using words?
Definitely, I think you can actually even make a movement yourself, like how you explain the building. That can be the diagram.
Right.
Body language. No. You can make a drawing of it, or you can have and indeed, but it's something that we have sometimes to say, hey, can you explain it in the diagram? Is also a nice test if the project is clear or if there's a logic that can be explained. And if it doesn't work, if you cannot make a diagram out of it, then we think, what's wrong?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's also interesting because talking about the work itself, like the final buildings, I think one thing that stands out is that the buildings and the projects always have a very clear part to whole relationship within them. And it's very clearly expressed. There's the building chunk. It is its chunk. It is defined. It has integrity, and it interacts with other chunks in a certain way. Whereas again, like not all projects, right? Other architects, let's say, have that kind of clarity. So, is achieving that level of clarity a conscious effort on your guys' part? I mean, I assume it is.
I think that it could be in a way because we're doing many projects at the same time. I think that it's also a bit our role. So we have three of us are just sort of involved and steering, sometimes actively, sometimes more passively, and then this clarity is you could say to the team, what is the intention and how can we explain this in a better way, or what's the best solution when you look at it from this perspective. Talking about it with the design team, I think helps to develop this clarity, and I think that's part, I would say, of the role that we play now in the offices. Yeah.
Is there a particular type of project that's your favorite to work on?
I would say that doesn't matter. I think ultimately you can say, well, I want to do this museum and I want this kind of fantastic, great, I don't know, train station or something like that. Of course, these projects can be amazing, but I think you could also have so much fun in a simple building if you have the right group of people and the right client that is sort of shares that excitement. Or you find a solution where you think, oh wow, this is something else, this is something amazing, or we achieved this. That's independent from the type of project, and there's joy there in any potentially there's joy in every project. And of course, when you start to do certain projects time after time, and it becomes a certain repetitive fact, then I'm a little bit lost, and I say, okay, maybe I should spend my time in a different way. And then ultimately, then when you say, okay, maybe let's not do that project, or somebody else says, oh, maybe let me do this, or because I like this and this and this. So we can, when you start to get bored, that's a bad thing. And of course, you can do similar projects in a different way and without getting bored. So, but if you start, oh yeah, I'm doing the same solution as this project again, and there we have that problem, and then I have to do this. That's not what I like.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, I think I would be a luxury, of course, that you can do that. So that you say, okay, I don't have to do this project, even though I did it 3 times before for somebody else. Yeah.
Right. Well, you're going to run out of projects at some point.
No, well, I think we're working for Bulgari, the jewelry store brand. And there we develop, with them, you could say it's a store, but every time it's in a different location. You try to find a different solution for the context, but at the same time they have their brand intentions together, and we try to find a different solution for each of them. That's a nice way where you have actually a similar commission, but it becomes a series of unique solutions that form again a sort of family of projects.
That's interesting.
But that's
really
one
interesting.
That's one example. But ultimately, I think it's every. I think many architects will say that every project is a certain adventure. It's like a journey. You go somewhere, even if you've been there before, you could still experience something else. It's like you make a travel. You go to a certain city again, but you experience a different event, or it can be different. And that makes it worthwhile and makes it exciting. Yeah.
Is there any type of project that your office hasn't done yet that you would like to do, though? Like a train station or an igloo? I don't know.
Yeah, no, this train. Yeah, I think Natalie has been a railroad architect for the Netherlands. I think she definitely wants to do a train station once, but it's not so easy to get these projects.
Sure.
No. Well, I think. Of course, I think we have this. Of course, we have our list. It's like, we want to do this kind of. Okay, we like to do. We have done a few towers, but it's nice to do a super big tower, or it's nice to do a fantastic park, so. From these kind of things, we are that. You have this list, but on the other hand, you should not be too much obsessed with it. And ultimately, I think I realize now during the years that if you have this kind of when things come together, when you maybe say, okay, you have a good location and a good client and and everybody's sort of happy with what you do, and then you can do a fantastic solution, and that everybody's kind of wow, mind blowing, and even it can be just an office building or a restaurant or a typical regular program. Can be, I think that's and everybody's aware of that. You can make a house or something that's quite a typical commission, make something fantastic and unique out of it. So doesn't matter exactly what ideal, the ideal solution in a way doesn't exist, and that the ideal commission doesn't exist. I want to do this museum or that. Maybe it would be nice, of course, but I won't be that. It's not going to be tragic when it doesn't happen.
Right.
Do you have any idea what is the biggest motivation for your clients to hire you for their project versus someone else?
Yeah, we asked this ourselves as well. Like, okay, why would they come to us? I think in a way, this aspect of finding an unexpected solution that they didn't think of or didn't know that they wanted this. Could be something, but of course you have different intentions. Some people say, "Oh yeah, these guys have done something else there and there and there. I could ask them because they know, or they have good relations to the supervisor." It happens as well. But I think in many cases where there's this sort of element of let's see what these guys can bring me, or they can offer me, and sometimes it's about a competition, and you just win the competition, and that can also come like that. So there's different ways to get a project, of course. Yeah.
Is it difficult to look for the unexpected? Find the unexpected in a project?
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah. You have to sometimes work harder to find it, or even if you think you have it, it turns to be the wrong one, the wrong unexpectedness. So there's more. And sometimes you don't find it, and then you try to make the best of it.
I was wondering, looking back. Sorry, go ahead, please.
No, and of course you have certain projects where everything falls in the right place,
right.
But you also have projects where it almost falls in the right place, and it doesn't. Yeah, you have to be honest about that as well.
Yeah.
You don't make masterpieces all the time, so. Yeah, let's be clear about it. No, but I think together, I think therefore the collection of projects, there can be some aspect in a certain project and some another one, and then each one of them has a certain something special. I think that it's a better way of putting it.
Right.
There's no perfection that.
Right. Well, I think it's interesting also to think about the work as a whole set of projects, obviously after you've been practicing for a period of time, because there's in some ways less pressure to shove all of the great ideas into one thing or to force things into a particular project.
Yeah. Now, I think the first building we did, and then this was this office building for the TV company. There we really tried to do a lot, put a lot into it. And then looking back and then saying, oh yeah, this and this and this, yeah, maybe that's a bit too much. I would not do it. We thought it was super important, but at that moment, but now looking at maybe there's this sort of like putting too much ingredients on the cake, But on the other hand, it's still a good. The core of the project still works. But yeah.
Well, you just have to go back to. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, but indeed that's the so where do you focus on in a project? And that you get a bit of experience. Okay, well, I can focus on. Yeah, on one hand, it's good to focus on more. That it means you can say, okay, I could sacrifice one, but it's also risky that you don't. That the clarity is lost, and that you somehow lose the whole momentum, or say, well, this is the real thing that we have to fight for, and the rest of it is kind of secondary. Yeah. It's also a strategic issue, so that you become a little bit more sadder and wiser, so to say, okay, maybe we should not do it like this, but maybe if I do it like this, I could eventually get what I want, so to say, get the best results.
Yeah, it might be more about hierarchy sometimes instead of trying to put everything at the same level of importance, right?
Yeah. No, but you work in the design process. You also have this sequence of different possibilities and options, and you have to try it out. So to say, otherwise, and then always, there's this moment of what's the best combination. This works pretty good. This sometimes people say, we do too many options, and it's probably something that architects often say, or you hear more often. But there's a value in it, in just trying things out before you know what to do.
Yeah.
And instead of having it immediately, this is it. Okay, let's do it. Bam. That's a kind of straight line. That's very, very rare that happens. It happens like this. Yeah.
Yeah. It's rare, and I feel like when I come across designers, that's how they operate every time. It makes me very nervous.
Or you can explain it like it was like this. Yeah, it's like right. We have this Midas touch,
Yeah.
Everything's going to work out. No. But of course, in a presentation and explanation, you can explain the project as if it was like this. But of course, in real life, in the sort of dynamics of the design process, it's much more, it's less straightforward. Yeah.
Is there? I was wondering, is there how much of that internal process where there's just a bunch of ideas, a bunch of options, and you're churning through them? How much of that is opened up and expressed? Let's say, to the general public through publications or clients?
That's funny that you asked that. Because actually what we're now working on is actually an exhibition on our own archive. It's opening next summer in the Architecture Institute in Rotterdam. And actually what we did, we gave our first 400 projects to the institute, to the archives. And then they are looking at it, and they have to take the white gloves and look at our phone models, our trashy models, but they're very valuable. Which gives us a very secure feeling that our archive, our 400 baby are in good hands. And right now that was a couple of years ago, and now we are, we're kind of making this looking into this archive, looking back at the project, but also at the they have all the project books, they have all the study models of these 400 projects.
Wow.
And then we can now maybe try to find a way how to open that up, or make it even interactive, or make it interesting for the public to look into this process or into this history. So how to exhibit that, that's also not so easy, but so it's a look into the archive of MVRDV, and it's going to be an interesting experience also for ourselves to see how we like to explain that. Yeah.
That's amazing. And that's going to be in Rotterdam?
Yeah, it's going to be in Rotterdam. Yeah. Oh, wow. It's more or less linked to the opening of the depot, the silver ball, the mirror ball next to it. That's next to the architecture institute. So you could basically look from the exhibition. You can look to that to the roof deck of that building. So it's very close. It's literally next to each other. Yeah.
That's so cool. We're gonna have to make a trip just for.
We gotta go check out Rotterdam.
Yeah, you should after the summer. Yeah, that's a good time. Yeah. Hopefully, I think it's already open in Europe. Americans can travel to Europe when you are vaccinated, and you can come.
There we go.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Take a look at the Silver Bowl. Such a cool project. One of the things also is that the three of you and the work seems to have a sincere interest in people and urban design and public spaces and cities and stuff. So not just creating nice looking buildings, there's a kind of social component to it. And I guess I was curious if you have a sense of where that interest comes from. Like, why not just focus on doing nice buildings from the perspective of a designer to create nice, beautiful things and nice objects, we could say, sort of.
Yeah, true. I think that is definitely there, and also from the early days already. So we have been asked this question before, and I think something of an answer, but maybe it's not. Is that how you were educated? I think that's part of it. And when we were in the architecture school in Delft, there was this sort of, you could say, transition period between, let's say, the Forum movement, and that was linked to Alder van Eyck originally, and also Herman Hefberger, and many of our teachers were more or less entrenched in this attitude, and let's say the rise of OMA and Rem Koolhaas, which have a different approach. But we were in this overlap moment in Delft University, so we experienced both. I literally had this day when, early I think it was even in my first year, when Alder van Eyck gave his farewell lecture, and for this last lecture he was going pension, and he wanted to move that to a different auditorium because he didn't want to breathe the same air as Rem Koolhaas had breathed before, because Rem gave a lecture before on the same day, and he didn't want to be in the same auditorium a few hours after Rem was there. It's like, what is going on here? And I was like first year, and I was okay. So I was with my first. Okay, there are really factions, and it's like a real serious thing. So that there's you stand for something, and or you really love or hate another architect and his ideas. So anyway, so in that force field we were educated, and I think we were something of both was stuck, so to say, in that education process.
I do think in architecture there is a tendency for people to create these camps or want to belong to one of these camps, and I've sometimes wonder if it's because it's easier. Frankly, because I think it's easier to just kind of self-assign to something that's established. Is this ever something you guys think about, the three of you, or you just do your thing? And
no, not so much. But I think that was much more present before. This camp issue that we're part of this and you're not part of that. Of course, you still have the discussions, but it's not so fanatic and obsessive, I think. But you still, of course, you do have certain movements or direction. But I think, it's ideally we hope, of course, people make books, and we were labeled like super Dutch for a while, and everybody was like, what's this? And now you're actually labeled, that you're part of this and that generation. I think, that some journalists and writers need that to organize their their perspectives, but it's not so much part of our own daily life, so to say. No.
Yeah, I do find it a bit peculiar, and especially when it's coming from an outsider's perspective, which is not to hate on writers or critics, but sometimes I'm like, I feel like we're just forcing people into these camps because I don't know.
Yeah, they need to put labels.
It makes it more and more understandable, maybe.
Sure, perhaps.
I'm wondering, what is the architecture scene like in the Netherlands in general and in Rotterdam particularly? Like, is Rotterdam...
Rotterdam, of course, it's very much an architecture city because there's quite some offices here, and also a lot of people from abroad that come to work for us, and other offices, of course, OMA, and also other studios. I think, there is a lively scene, but also from people that know each other from different offices, but then meet each other or live in the same houses. So it's mostly that our staff know most people from the other offices than that we do. But of course, it's not that you see them so much. Everybody's busy. But I meet these guys usually I used to meet them at airports. You say, oh yeah, you're here. There you have the Architecture Institute is now called the New Institute, and they have sometimes debates and discussions. But it's not that intense outside the offices, I think. But of course, you have a lot of people that are working in the architecture profession, relatively speaking, and that gives a certain interesting group in the city. So the city also acknowledges the fact that they have quite a lot of people working in the sector of architecture, and also because many of these projects are not actually in Rotterdam; we design for projects all over the world, so to say. And so we have, that means you have like maybe 1,000 architects in a city of less than 1 million. That makes is a certain size, so to say. Yeah.
That's crazy. On the one hand, it sounds wonderful, and the other, I was wondering, is it, well, not for you guys because you're so large and established, but does it make it difficult because there's like, the designer market is like oversaturated kind of in one space?
No, not so much. I think it is, of course, there's interesting competition still going on. I think there's also an interesting debate in the city around the theme of architecture, about the topic of housing, where and how to build, especially the topic of, let's say, energy, sustainability. There's a lot going on. There's also, like in many other cities, this kind of affordability issue dealing with housing. So there is definitely more interest as well, let's say, from the general public about architecture as a couple of years before. I would say that's hopeful. Yeah. We have now a month of architecture in the Netherlands, and just started off, so to say, the last week. And there's all kind of debates and events happening, discussions, and there's also an exhibition in a parking garage, actually, because there's so many empty parking garages right now. So they put a huge model of the city of Rotterdam from the municipality, from the Urban Planning Bureau, of all the new projects in Rotterdam in the city. Quite exciting to see, because you don't really realize when you're designing a project for a certain location what is happening altogether. So the city had that overview, and now they show what's on the board. And some of these projects might never happen, but already everything that is a project is then shown in a model with a slightly different color. So you see existing and potential future projects. It's going to be quite interesting, so to say. There's going to be lots of stuff happening when you look at that model. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds really cool.
That sounds amazing.
I know.
That model sounds really interesting, but the whole kind of scene that you're describing.
They basically put a lot of gravel, so to say, in the garage. So it's a underground parking garage, and then with lamps lit this huge model, let's say, I think 1 to 500 or so of the city. It's pretty fun. It's also attractive for non-architects.
Yeah.
So and I think that's many people come to see it, and there's that. But that's, I think, in some places that modern architecture is considered a threat.
Yes.
But in Rotterdam, it's slightly changing maybe, but still there's still a certain openness. The more towers, the more exciting the skyline is, the more exciting everybody is. Oh wow, another one comes. They feel that this is distincting them or differentiating Rotterdam from the other cities in the Netherlands. But of course, there's debate about should we make different, how to optimize the use of space, how to live together in an efficient way, how can we, instead of expanding the city and using more land, we don't have that much land, so let's how can we live together in a smart way in a relatively small piece of land. And that's what keeps us busy, I think, in the next decade for sure, in our own countries.
I think I was born in the wrong country.
We might have to move back to.
Well, it's also we have to be organized in a way, because it's like a tiny place, and we don't have that much emptiness. So we don't have that much wilderness, or you can escape the city, but then there's already the next city. So you have you have to navigate your way through. I go cycling with some friends in the weekend, and then you can make a route where you feel like you are really in a beautiful landscape. But then you basically navigate your way through agglomerations and all kind of stuff that is unattractive. But if you take the wrong turn, then it's going to be a whole different story.
On the subject of urban design and cities, I was wondering if you have a sense or some ideas as to like what the future city is going to look like, and maybe even more specifically, if there's like a certain specific technology or urban form or set of principles or something that's going to dictate how cities are going to evolve in the future. Yeah.
Now I think there's lots of people really start to realize now that it's sort of everything is connected in the sense like if you want to make a more or better livable city, we should not just look at the buildings, we should also look at the spaces in between, we should look at traffic, we should look at how to reduce, let's say, the dominance of the car and these kind of things, how to make urban heating, how to make energy neutral, how to become energy neutral in a city that is not energy neutral yet. So this whole transition, there's a lot of discussion from the politics here, on a European level as well, but doing it is a different story. So now we have to try to invent it. I think architects can definitely play a role in this whole major topic, how to become carbon neutral or how to become energy neutral, how to have a more attractive living environment. These go beyond, let's say, objects of architecture. So this is really an urban development, urban development topic, and every piece of architecture is then playing a role in it.
Yeah. One of the final questions for me is, so you guys have been around for 30 years, the MVRDV, right? Nearly 30 years. And what's kind of funny is that I always think of your office as a young office in a good way.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Forever young.
And I was wondering, like, do you because there's a freshness to the work, but and you seem to bring that to the work even now, for sure. But do you guys feel like a young office? Like, how does it feel to be?
Yeah, I think it's nice that you say that. Young at heart, at least. But I think, it indeed, it would be good to have that spirit, at least, that you don't get sour, sort of. We do make some kind of at our Christmas presentations the average age of the office, all the staff, the age of the staff together, and then we are always more or less at already a couple of years we are 32 or 33, so that's the average age of the office. And even though we get older, the age of the average age of the office doesn't get older. So that's an interesting. So maybe that explains it, that the average age is already the same for a couple of years. That indicates that we stay young. Maybe that's an explanation. Yeah, but it would be nice to keep the spirit, at least, open. Yeah, curiosity alive. Yeah.
Right.
My last question would be, what do you do to relax, unwind, and just, keep it loose? Like, do you have a secret to keep it loose?
Yeah. No, of course, you have to escape every now and then. But I think it's nice, of course, I think, of course, you say the good thing about this whole pandemic is that you don't have to travel. And then the bad thing about the pandemic is that you cannot travel. So, yeah. Yeah, but that's not, I'd like to have every now and then something hit the road again. But you see, and we have in the office, we have now started a peloton, a riding group of cyclists.
Yeah.
So the next thing, the next project is our own kits that we had to discovering now. That we will be kind of crew of MVRDV cyclists racing through the city. Will be funny. No, that's one thing I do every now and then, and I think I'm going to now hopefully soon again to concerts and performances and cultural events.
Sure.
That's we're all looking forward to that. Who doesn't? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, this has been phenomenal. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we're dealing with a time difference, so this is dinner time for you, absolutely, and we really appreciate it.
I'm going to have a little, maybe a glass of wine again. I think Natalie just came home, so we have a discussion and talk about life in general. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you guys for listening. If you like this interview, then please consider supporting this show by leaving a review in the Apple Podcast app. That's a great way to support this show. You can also find us on Spotify and YouTube. Also subscribe to our show on those channels. Leave comments, etc., etc.
You can also support the show by sending us money directly.
But it has to be a bag of money. Okay?
It has to be a bag of gold. That's the only money we would accept.
We don't want checks. We don't want
don't take credit cards.
Cashier checks. No credit cards. No cash. Just gold.
Just gold.
Nuggets.
Just coins
in fact,
of gold.
I want nuggets of gold.
Oh, nuggets. That sounds great. Not chicken nuggets. They could come with. That's fine. We're also on all of the social media: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So we don't really are on Facebook that often. Mostly Instagram if you're looking for us. We also have a hotline that you can text or call by leaving a voicemail. The number is 213-222-6950. Feel free to reach out. You have a question, you enjoy the show, you want to share something with us, we're here, and we'll try to respond.
Yes, and we did get a few messages, and we're going to reply to them shortly. We're trying to get through some episodes right now, but we are going to get to it. Don't worry.
David is the one in charge, so don't be in a hurry.
Anything else?
That's it.
Have a great day. Have a great weekend. Have a great week. Whatever's going on in your life. Whatever time this comes out.
Yeah.
Do what you want. Live your life. People who listen to this recording, they're like, what is happening in this outro?
Are they going to end it or what?
Side note for the longtime listeners, we don't have a podcast desk at the moment. We're in the middle of swapping things.
This is TMI, man.
So we are recording cross-legged on the carpet like a couple of locals in the San Francisco Bay Area.
That's when you know when you made it with a podcast.
I'm smoking my microphone like a pipe. You see?
Okay. I think it's time to go.
All right, everybody. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you again next week or sooner. Bye.
Bye-bye.